Hi everyone, welcome to part 2 of the Open Labs webinar series. Today's focus will be the doctor. My name is Jamie Thorson and I'm the manager of our implementation engineering team here at Cloud Elements, and I will be walking you through how to use the doctor. But before we get started, just a little housekeeping. Please submit any questions you have in the GoToWebinar console. Questions will be answered at the end. And then slides and recordings will be shared after the webinar. So the agenda today is to go over what is Open Labs. It's going to be a quick overview because this is what the last webinar series was about, but this is also where you find the doctor. So we'll do a quick overview of that. We'll go over what is the doctor and why to use it, as well as how to use it. We'll go over troubleshooting and gotchas, how to contribute, now and the future, and then we'll answer all the questions that have been submitted and wrap things up. So to begin with, if you had joined the last webinar, this might be a review, but what is Open Labs? Open Labs is our community. It's an open source organization with a handful of repos. Each repo has a very specific topic and intention. When they all live under a single organization, these repos become what we call Open Labs. And then the doctor is one of the repos within the Open Labs organization, and as I mentioned, that's going to be the focus for today. So to begin with, getting started with the doctor. The what, why, and how. So the doctor is a command line interface tool that allows easy control management with Cloud Elements resources. It provides the ability to move between environments and to back up files locally or to GitHub or any Git management or version management tool. In addition, we've seen customers develop and use the doctor within their continuous integration and continuous development frameworks. So to get started, you can visit the Open Labs organization and check out the doctor repo, or it's as easy as running npm install-g for globally CE utils, which is the doctor, the NPM package associated with the doctor. Okay, so before we get started on common tools, I'm going to hop over to our Open Labs, our Open Labs organization. So in this organization, as I mentioned, there's a variety of repos that you have access to. The one that we're focusing on today is the doctor. So here you'll find the basic code associated with the doctor, as well as a README informing you of how to get started using it. As you can see, you can start with just the npm install, and that's because this is an npm package. So if you are in Google or in npm, you can search for this package. So I'm just going to start with Google, and if you do see npm CE util, you will see that the CE util npm package is the first one that'll show up, and this is the doctor. So when you open this, you can see the npm package. So those of you who have worked with Node package management tools, you might have familiarity with how to access these tools. But if you don't, this is a standard npm package. You can see here the same steps you'll see in the Open Labs repo, but in this version, you don't see the code that is behind this npm package. And that's why we're really focusing on the community right now. But for those of you who prefer to just work with npm, you can also access it this way. Within the community, you can actually see the code that goes into this package and work with the code that goes into this package, so that if at any point you need to adjust it to meet your needs or pull it out of the npm package and use it in your own ways, you have the ability to do that. This way you also have the ability to contribute to our package, and any changes that we make in this repo, we push to the npm package. So if it's a change just for your company, you would want to clone the repo and edit it on your side and use it your own way. But if you're like, hey, this is actually something that needs to change for all users, like a bug or a defect or something, then you can actually make changes and we can get that pushed to our npm tool. Okay, so I'm going to get started just showing you how you would use the doctor. I already have it installed. So you would start with doing the npm install-g CE utils, which I've already done. but I've cleared my note so I don't have anything else besides for the installment. So I'm starting from the same place that you would be starting from once you installed. So for example, to get started, you always have you want to have accounts associated with the Cloud Elements account. So if I ran Dr. List account, I don't have any accounts associated with this right now. So I don't get any results. But if I come over here, I can see that there's ways to get started. So I can do Dr. Init. If I do Dr. Init, what it's essentially doing is actually creating an account associated with the doctor. So what I'm going to first do is just show you that if I do Dr. Help, I can get a list of what I can work with. This has both the flags you can use and the commands that are associated with this. So you can see I have download, upload, delete, graph, accounts, init, and help. And then if I had accounts, which is what we're going to start with, I can also then further do Dr. accounts -- help, and I can get even more specific commands that I can interact with. So I can interact with Dr. accounts add, Dr. accounts list, Dr. accounts remove, and so if I wanted to add an account, I could run this script. And essentially what I'm doing when I run this is I'm adding an account with a specific name I'm giving it, a user token, an org token, and a base URL. And that's what these flags for. N is the name of the account, U is the user token, O is the org token, and B is the base URL. And I'll show you that a little bit more later, but I kind of wanted to go over that because when I run Dr. Init, you'll see that it starts prompting me these same things. So this is for the -n flag, it's asking me the name. So in this particular case, I'm going to name this webinar demo. And then I would put a user secret. So before I add this, what I'm going to tell you is that I don't recommend you ever show your org and user secrets to people. I created a specific Cloud Elements account that has no element instances, no virtual data resources, no formulas. It's a brand new account that I'm grabbing my user and org secret for this demo, and then I'm going to go ahead and delete this account because in general, it isn't good practice to show your user and org secrets. So it's asking for my org secret, so I can find that here in my Cloud Elements account, and I can add that to, oops, that's my user secret. That's for, okay, and I can add that here, and then it'll ask for my organization secret, and I'm going to do the same thing here. And then the base URL, and this one's important. It's not asking for the URL of our user interface. So this one you can see is staging.cloudelements.io. That's not what it's looking for. It's looking for the one that you hit when you hit our UI, or when you hit our API, not our UI. And so this looks more like the example one that we provide. So I'm just going to use that one, but it's staging.cloudelements.com. So you never want to use the .io. And that's why we give you the example, but just as a reminder. So now I have added that. So if I run the same command I ran earlier, Dr. accounts list, now I have an account. And this account has all of the information I provided: the name, the user secret, the org secret, and the base URL. So now I have an account I can interact with. And the things I can do with this is I can download objects, I can upload things, I can delete. If I have a formula, I can graph the formula in a flowchart. And so let's just start making some stuff in this account that we're going to interact with so that you can see how it works. So I'll go ahead and clear this from there and hop over to Cloud Elements. So in Cloud Elements, I'm going to first just create an instance. So I will create an instance of Salesforce. And I'm creating this instance so that I can create a VDR associated with it. Instances themselves actually aren't moved using the doctor. So the doctor will move your elements if you've built element builder elements or extended elements. It'll move those. It'll move your virtual data resources, it will move your formulas, but what it won't move is your instances of elements or your instances of formulas. And the reason being that those are instances of elements are authenticated, and you don't really want to move authenticated things from one account to another. That creates vulnerabilities. In addition, all of your work that you do in, say, staging will be with demo instances, so you wouldn't be moving those over to prod. You would want to actually have your users create their instances in production. Okay, so I'm going to build a virtual data resource. And I'm only going to map one field, just as an example. And I will map it to this instance that I created, and I believe that there should be a contact object I will use. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. So now if I wanted to, let's say I had a bunch of virtual data resources. Sure, Cloud Elements offers the ability to go into our platform documentation and pull down your resources. You have to first pull down the left-hand side, which is the definition, and then your right-hand side, which is the transformation, which in this case is pretty simple. So this would be an easy one to move over. But if you had ones that were maybe 100 fields long, all mapped out just the way you wanted it, you tested it in staging, maybe you don't want to have to go through and manually move your 7 or 8 different VDRs with all the fields. So this is where the doctor would come in. So I have now that account that I told you called Webinar Demo that's associated with this. So now I can use my download feature. So let's say I didn't know how to do this. I would say doctor download -- help to get an idea of maybe what I need to run. And so I can look and see, okay, here's an example, doctor download VDRs, and then this is the account name, and I can download it to a file. It looks like it could download maybe to a directory. So there's a few different options. So I'm going to try. First, I'm going to show you that on my desktop, the only folder I have is the folder of all things, and I don't have any other folders. So if I was like, well, I want to download this to a folder on my desktop, I could say doctor download VDRs from my webinar demo account to a directory that will be desktop, and then I'll call this, I'll just call it VDRs. And then I will hit enter. And so now you can see it's thinking. And this is because it's going through and saving them. Now I only had one, so it went pretty fast. So it saved an object called demo, and it saved the transformation of demo to a Salesforce Service Cloud. So now if I look at my desktop, you can see I have this VDRs folder over here. And if I open that, I have this object definition, which has that demo in it. And I'll just go ahead and open that in Atom. Sorry, Atom opens extra tabs. So here it is, and it has I left the display name blank. It had the path is test. It's the type string. And if we go back and look at it, you can see it was test. It was type string. And then, so that's the definition. That's the left-hand side. And if I come over and I open the transformation, then you can see that test was mapped to account ID. It was organizational level, and the object name was demo. And it was mapped to contact, which, as you might recall, I mapped it to contact. So all of that pulled all of that down. I have it locally. So now that I have it locally, I can easily push it up to GitHub or whatever maybe my team is working with. So in this way, if you have different people from your team who are creating different VDRs, and then you need to save them all to a repository or back it up locally or push it to Git or GitHub, now you have that ability to do that and back it up and make sure that you all have the latest version of everything. But then in addition, now that I have it backed up locally, let's say I'm making some big change. And maybe this one I even have already put in prod, but I'm making like, okay, now we're going to start offering version 2. So maybe I start, okay, demo v2. And I start from this same VDR, but now I'm adding new fields. And let's say while I'm doing this, I just really break something. And I can't remember, I've made so many changes, I can't remember what I broke. It's really nice to be able to make changes here in the UI, do new mappings, maybe add some custom JavaScript to it. And you know, when you're in here and you get 100 lines of JavaScript in the organization and then another 100 at the instance level, all of a sudden, there's a lot of room for mistake, and you can't remember what you've changed and what's different. And so now you have the ability to say, okay, I've made these changes in demo v2. Let me just actually look at how demo v2 is different than demo v1. And you can do that by uploading demo again. I didn't call it v1, but I'm calling it v1 now. Or you can do that by then downloading demo v2 and like actually looking at the code differences. So that creates a huge ability to actually back up your code and version control it. So then in addition, I'm going to just go ahead and delete this. And then delete this side too. Okay, so now I'm back to having no virtual data resources. But I have that one on my computer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to re-upload it. So we had been doing download here. So now I'm going to, again, do the same thing. If I don't know what I'm doing, I could say, okay, doctor, upload, but I'm really not sure what I'm doing. I'll do the help again just to get some ideas. And you see, again, you have all of the information you need. And this one's really similar. So I'm just going to doctor upload VDRs from webinar demo from, let's see, I did it from the directory, which was desktop VDRs. So I'm going ahead and do that. And then it tells you again, it's, excuse me, it's creating that object, and then it's creating the transformation. So now if I come back over, I have to refresh, but I'll go ahead and refresh. And then you can see that demo one is back. So if this had been 2 different accounts that I created within my doctor script, so if I had doctor accounts list, and I actually had 2 different accounts here, you could see how instead of taking it from one and putting it in the same one, I could easily have taken it from one and put it in a different one just by replacing this name in my command line. And I didn't do that because I don't have another account where I'm going to show you user and org secrets. Like I said, I created that one just for this demo. So I did upload it to the same account, but I deleted it first so you could see how that could be replaced. Okay, so that's basically how you interact with virtual data resources. And as I mentioned, we do the same type of thing for formulas. A difference is, well, it's not a difference. What I didn't show you yet, but I'll show you in formulas, is if you have JavaScript within a step, what's cool about the doctor is it actually breaks it out so that you get it in its own JavaScript file. And so a lot of the times when you actually grab stuff from our platform documentation, that JavaScript is stringified, so you'll get an object with a script key, and then the value being a stringified version of that JavaScript, which is hard to read. So if you're actually trying to look at it or review it or save it, oftentimes you have to put in our platform to see what's going on. The doctor pulls that out into a separate file so that you can actually open that file in Atom or whatever system you use and actually see that JavaScript as a JavaScript file. So I'm going to do a quick demo with a formula. So I'll just build a new formula, and I'll call it demo formula. And this formula is really just a demo, so I'm not going ahead and making anything super worthwhile. But Okay, so let's just do something like that. Obviously, this doesn't do anything. This isn't a real formula that we would use, but now I have some formulas. So again, same thing, come over here, let's see, we'll do doctor download formulas from webinar demo to, we'll do another directory, and we'll do desktop, and then I guess this one we'll call formulas. Okay, so now I'll go back to my desktop. I don't need this open anymore. And here's that formulas one that was created. And in the demos formulas, now I have a flow chart, a formula JSON, and then, like I said, the JavaScript steps. So now this JavaScript has its own, it's pulled out. So you can see it as a JavaScript file, which is nice because then you actually can see what's going on. But in addition, I'm going to show you this flow chart that's created. So if I'm in a web browser and I go to File, Open File, and I go to that desktop formulas HTML flowchart, and I open that, I can actually see what's going to happen in this formula. So this is all the steps that are in that formula. We have a trigger step, a JavaScript step, and then it's the end. And then if I hover over them, it gives you a little bit more information about that. So you can see the trigger is typed manual. It's asynchronous. You can see the JavaScript, and you can actually see what's in that JavaScript. And then you can also come down and look at the keys and see what kind of steps they are. So if it's a script step, it looks like that. And as you can see, our JavaScript step does look like that. So you can actually kind of see what's going on. So if you or someone from your team, if you built a formula and someone from your team had to look at it and review it, maybe they don't need to import the entire formula. They could just kind of open the flowchart and look over the code, or open the JavaScript and review the JavaScript rather than having to import the entire formula or have a separate Cloud Elements account that they test with. Okay, so and then similarly, similar use case for if you were doing elements. So if you built your own elements, it does the same type of breakdown. You can do the same type of downloads and uploads that you would do. So nothing too unique there. Okay, so then with that said, I'm going to pop back over here to the slides. And so then in the slides, I did include this the common commands and what they do. And I'll just briefly touch on them, even though I just showed you them, because I know that people have different learning styles. So some people want to see it in action and some people want to see it in words. So I'll just briefly go over them. And then also, since this is in the slide deck, it will be sent out to you. So then you'll also be able to review these. So I ran the doctor accounts list. And what that did was list all the accounts you have available to interact with. And again, you can add more accounts. That's not based on the Cloud Elements accounts you own. It's based on the ones that you have created within your NPM tool. Doctor accounts remove. Oh, I didn't go over that. So let me actually do that real quick. So actually, there's two that I'm going to go over. I didn't show you how to add one without doing the doctor init. So I'll add a fake one, and then I'll remove it so that you can see. So if I come back over here and I do doctor account help, I had told you that there was this way to add an account as well, just by adding the flag. So that's essentially what I'm going to show you right now. So I'm going to do doctor account add, and I'm going to add one. I'm going to actually add one that's called fake. And so my user secret is not going to be real. I'm just going to do something like that. My organization is not real. And then my base URL, I'll just put in a real one. So let's say I did this. It also adds that account. So now if I doctor account, oops, sorry. Now if I Okay, sorry, forgot an S on accounts. So now if I list them, you can see both the webinar demo and the fake one. And so let's say I made two. I'm like, wow, this one called fake really doesn't look like it has the right user and org secret. I should really just remove that. So then I can use the doctor accounts remove, and I can just remove fake. And so now if I list, that one's gone and I no longer have it. So if you accidentally add one and put the wrong credentials, or if someone from your company is a user and using their account and then they leave the company, you can remove those in that way so that you don't have it cluttering up your accounts list. Okay, and then we did go over the doctor uploads, and that just uploads. It can upload from a file or directory. Something to note is that our older version of the doctor used import and export instead of upload and download, but we had a lot of people questioning what that meant, and we found that a lot more people are used to downloading files and uploading files than importing and exporting. So to clear it up, we've changed it to be upload and download, but sometimes in our instructions it'll still say that it's importing the VDR. So, and we made everything backwards compatible, so we do still have people using the import and export keywords, but most of our docs will now say upload or download. Same thing with downloading VDRs or formulas, or uploading formulas. So these are all just examples. The one thing with formulas to note is that we did add being able to add a version. For example, we have different formula engines. So you might have one that's running on one formula engine and one that's running on another, and want to have these as different versions. So there is a -v flag that you'll see in these examples that we recently added. Okay, so, oops, sorry. So how do I contribute? So the doctor's set up in a way that you're welcome to contribute, that there's multiple ways to contribute. So if you were with me on our last webinar series, we talked about how to contribute to Open Labs in general, but it's a little bit different with the doctor because it's already built in such a way that you can use it. The entire repo is built as one project rather than having it be using parts of a repo to accomplish tasks. And one of the things we talked about is that within Open Labs, there are within the Open Labs organization, the different repos are named based on their functionality, with the exception of big projects. So small ones like formulas, elements, and VDRs are named with like the idea that there's something specific to Cloud Elements and examples of that, but larger ones like the Doctor and Heimdall are full projects on their own. So you can contribute by making an issue. That's one way to contribute. So I left this issue open so I can show you. So someone who was just a user of the Doctor said, okay, home missing in Windows environment. And they made an issue that the tool doesn't work for Windows because you reference home and you need to use home path for Windows machines. And then it was addressed and pushed so we can close this issue. In addition, you can create issues for a variety of things that you experience. So if you run into a bug, you can create an issue and you can add a label over here like, hey, I think there's a bug. If you run into an idea that you're like, hey, I really wish the Doctor did this, you could add an issue and mark it as an enhancement. If you are using the Doctor and you're like, I'm having a lot of trouble using it, but I think this should work, maybe I'm doing something wrong, you could use it, you can mark it as help wanted or a question. And so that is one way that you can contribute, because it also helps us to see where people are running into issues so we can fix any bugs or documentation as needed. But in addition, if you're using it and you're actually a developer and doing the code and you're like, hey, I think this should do something different, you can actually make a pull request. So maybe this one is a pull request to fix special characters. And essentially all this one is doing is adding some regex to make sure that when you're adding special characters, it's being replaced appropriately. And someone just made this pull request, and then someone from our team will review it and add it as needed. So those are different ways that you can contribute. But in addition, before you get started, if you're going to contribute via actually using code, you do have to fork and clone the repo. So let me just go over that real quick. So if you've used Git or GitHub, this is probably really familiar to you. So I'm not going to go too in depth, but just a quick overview. This is the Doctor, and it lives under the Cloud Elements Open Labs. Excluding the people who are the managers of this, you don't actually have the ability to contribute directly to the Open Labs repo, and that's pretty common for open source. So you actually have to fork the repo, and I'm going to fork it to my personal GitHub. So now I'm getting a copy, essentially. They're taking that entire thing and putting it under my repo. So now I have Jamie T, the Doctor. And then from here, I can go ahead and clone this. So on my command line, I would want to make sure I'm in an environment where I want it cloned, which I am. I'm under Open Lab. So I would just say git clone, and then I would, that did not copy that URL. Okay, so I would just git clone and then paste that in there. And then it actually clones the Doctor to this environment. So now if I listed what I have here, you can see the Doctor exists there. And now I can open it locally and make changes. So if I opened it locally and made changes, which I haven't done, but I'm just going to say that I had, I could create a new pull request. When I create this pull request, I can choose the base repository that I'm making the pull request against. So I could make it to myself, but I don't really need to. I'm going to make it against the Open Labs repo, but it's going to compare my Jamie T, the Doctor, to the Open Labs, the Doctor. And then I would, right now I don't have anything to compare, so I can't actually create the pull request, but then I'd go ahead and create the pull request. And then that would show up under the Open Labs pull request. So that is how you can contribute code if you have an idea for a code change that you think is needed. And then it would get reviewed. It doesn't just go into the code. It would get reviewed. There might be comments or feedback, and then we would go ahead and add it if we agreed that it needed to be added. So if you're contributing, there's some other useful commands that I added here, which is just git remote upstream, add upstream. So that's just to set the remote repository. So if you fetch changes, it actually grabs them not just from your local version of the Doctor, but also from the Open Labs version in case there's changes that you don't have. And then you can fetch the upstream, you can merge, and then you can push your changes. So I just included these in here so that you can look back at these in your own time. Okay, so should I contribute? So while you can contribute code, ideas, or problems to the Doctor, the purpose of the Doctor and other larger Open Labs projects is really to benefit you. So this was built with the intention of helping customers, partners, and our internal developers move faster when they have to change environments or version control, because we have found that everyone does their development and staging and actually has their live work in production. And while we have APIs you can hit to move things over, people were finding it slow. And as I mentioned earlier, especially if they're trying to do continuous integration and continuous development, they want to have quick releases that go from their staging and their test environment into what they already have released to their customers. So they can do this in a more automated way by using the Doctor. So it's perfect to just use the Doctor when backing up code or moving without having to contribute or change anything, unless you are very ambitious and want to. So that's a pretty high-level overview, and mostly what I wanted to cover. Are there any questions?
Yes, so we had a couple of questions come in, so I will read those. The first question, is there a way to find the recording from the last Open Labs webinar?
Yes. If you want to see the recording from the last Open Labs webinar, you can find it on our website, or you can reach out to your delivery manager or account manager.
Do you have any best practices for what to do or not to do with the doctor?
Yes. So one of the things that you are able to do is a command like doctor download all to get all of your VDRs, all of your formulas, and that's perfectly fine. But we've seen people do doctor delete all formulas or something like that, and then be really upset all of their formulas were deleted. So in general, we don't recommend that you delete everything at once unless you really are truly trying to purge that, and unless you've already downloaded them. It's best practice probably to delete them one at a time, or even delete them manually, because in our UI you actually have the "Are you sure you want to delete?" And that isn't actually in the doctor. So if you delete them all, you delete them all. So it's I would use the delete with reservation.
How do I find the proper base URL for staging or production?
Yeah, so in the Cloud Element docs, you'll see, well, there's actually multiple ways. So in our docs, you can see sample code and calls to make, and all of those have the URL. But in addition, if you actually make any call, so let me hop over to my other window. So I made that instance of Salesforce, so I'll just use that one as an example. If you make any call to this instance, I'll just make a get agents. It makes actually a curl request for you, and you can see in that curl request what we're hitting. So you can see right here, staging.cloudelements.com. So that's our API. So you can see that, and that would be the base URL. So the base is always just the URL before any paths added. So, and same with production. They don't change those. So staging is always staging.cloud-elements.com, and production is api.cloud-elements.com. So you can become familiar with those, or if you forget, you can always look them up.
Awesome. And then the last question, I'm used to emailing the implementation team for help. Do I have to raise an issue in the repo, or can I just email the implementation team directly? Yeah,
absolutely. So that's a good question. You can always just email the implementation team. We are here to help you. So if you want to email us, we can either raise an issue in GitHub, or we can just directly make any issues that are raised. We make corresponding developer tickets for. So if you make an issue and you raise it directly to implementations, we'll probably just make that developer ticket rather than making an issue in GitHub, but we will follow up and make sure that that gets addressed to the correct people.
No more questions.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining today. Let me just quickly give you a plug for the next one. So please be sure to join us for the next two parts of Open Labs webinar series. The next one coming up is using artifacts, which includes elements, VDRs, and formulas, and how to use the ones that exist in the Open Labs repo with Cloud Elements. And thank you very much for joining.